It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Great to be back. Needed a couple days. Now, I mean, this is the thing, Ant. Take a couple of days, and then all of a sudden you're like, you want to know what? I'm rearing. I'm ready to go. I got things to say. I got energy to say them. I got a clear mind. Was it clear mind, clear heart, whatever? I'm losing this reference, but
You're talking about the Friday Night Lights?
yeah, it's a Friday Night Lights thing, and I always mess it up.
Clear eyes, full hearts.
Yeah, there we go. Clear eyes, full heart, can't lose.
Yeah.
And it's a Tuesday, so excited to get going. I was out in rainy Ashburn, something that I did not anticipate. Definitely should have checked the forecast. That's one that I did lose, but got great stuff. Kind of getting to watch the first Dan Quinn full team practice. It was very, very interesting out there in Ashburn today. And there's so many different places I could start, but I think the most obvious one is just like the energy and the vibe out there is so much different. And it's easy to be excited when something is new. So I would be pretty stunned if it was like a dead practice. I mean, considering who Dan is. But I think what's going to be interesting is to watch that continue over the course of months and hopefully years. Can they bring this kind of energy every single day? And, you know, Dan, obviously, his background is varied, but you know, most directly, you say he comes from the Pete Carroll school. And this is the kind of stuff that Pete used to do. He found ways to keep the energy high. And even though it was kind of a mad day weather-wise, it's starting to rain, which, like, you know, hey, it's football weather. Like, I went up to Mitch Tischler because Mitch also apparently didn't check the forecast, and so we're just standing out there with no umbrellas, no jackets, no nothing. I tap Mitch and I go, just a couple of football guys watching practice, huh? As we sit there with water dripping down our in Mitch's case his hat, in my case just my hair. But it was cool to see them start, and some of you might have seen this on social media, with like kind of this pad drill where they put a bunch of pads down and have everybody run through them, and then they do side shuffles through them, and it like makes sense from a warm-up strength and conditioning perspective. But it also, as they do it, they're all yelling and hooting and hollering. All the coaches are in there, and it just like lets everybody kind of get ramped up and in that final moment before you go into these individual drills that are very easy to kind of slog through, and I don't want to say take for granted, but get very monotonous day over day. It's a chance to kind of get the energy up, make sure everybody's locked in, shake out any cobwebs you got, and get going. So there's little things like that from a practical standpoint, I really like how they approach football. Because at the end of the day, well, this is their jobs, and it's really important to a lot of people, themselves, us, the fans, everybody. It still is a game. And finding ways to keep that lightness, to keep the core, the essence of what it is as part of the job, I think is essentially important to longevity, because it makes people look forward to going through. And can they do this pad thing every day? No. There's going to be alternate versions of things to get going. And I've seen that in all kinds of different ways. I was watching earlier today, Caitlin Clark was mic'd up for one of the recent Fever practices, and they played a game of red light, green light. You can do Simon Says. Like, you play these games, and they're solid to kind of get people locked in mentally, to get their brain working a little bit, but while also having fun. And like, as a strength and conditioning coach or as a coach at the start of practice, you do like, you know, essentially capture the flag. Like, I've seen all different kinds of versions of this. But you find ways to get the competitive juices flowing, to get people mentally involved, and to accomplish some of the stuff from a physical preparation standpoint, quick, fast feet, kind of just get the muscles firing, get everything going in a way that is great. And Dan certainly understands that, and I love to see that element on day one of practice. Then you get into the individual drills, and I, you know, as you can imagine, spent time with the quarterbacks, and I will just relay this information. I wouldn't read anything into it, but right now Marcus Mariota is clearly QB1. He takes the first rep of every drill. Today, when they worked with the ones and the twos, They kind of have 1s and 3s and 7-on-7 together, and then 2s and 4s. I'll get to the double-barreled 7-on-7s in a little bit. But Mariota is quarterback 1, as in he's taking the first rep. Does that mean that he will ultimately be QB1, especially when it didn't actually cost Jayden Daniels any reps because they were doing double of everything today, and they're working simultaneously, and the only way to know who is 1s and 2s is who is out there with him. So like McLaurin and Dotson, et cetera, were with Marcus Mariota. And then in the individual drills, Marcus went first. Like, who cares? As they progress, and when they get into the training camp and they open, is Marcus Mariota taking the first snap of training camp? Then I'm interested. That tells us something about the depth chart. But for right now, not much to it. But it was cool to see Cliff work. It was cool to see him really have game-specific type of stuff in there. It's, hey, we're working on, and not that other coaches haven't, like this, quarterback drills always are going to be fairly game-specific because, well, their position translates incredibly well to the game in terms of the drills you have to do because you repeat the types of throws and footwork and things that you are going to do in the game, from rollouts to your drops to, I don't know, obviously every team does like running back handoff drills. But they focused in on certain parts of the offense, some of the quick release stuff. Hey, quick, bop, 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 throw, and there's a target to throw to with 3 different kind of mini targets within it. So it's like this big, giant rectangular thing with 3 squares that are netted, and you try to throw the ball in the net. And, watching Marcus and Jayden and Jeff Driscoll and Sam Hartman go through it was interesting. I'm curious and we'll have some from Cliff later on in the show. We're going to bring back the pick 6 at 6. So you hear more from Cliff Kingsbury later on in the show. But I didn't get a chance to listen to his press conference because I had to jet to get back for the show. But I'd be curious to know what Cliff thinks of his footwork. And obviously, I doubt he's going to answer anything. But like, hey, we're really happy. But I'm curious, Logan. He and I talked about this on Take Command that came out came out this morning. Logan is so impressed with what he sees from Daniels over the weekend in rookie minicamp. And it was just interesting comparing the footwork and the bases and some of that stuff today with Daniels to Mariota especially, but also to Hartman and to Driscoll, because Jayden is pretty upright. Like his feet were narrower than I expected based off watching him on film and kind of watching how he is in games. But that doesn't mean he doesn't have a good base underneath him. And so, whereas like Hartman is super wide, and I was talking with Keim about this on the side of the field, Hartman's super wide, and I actually think he's too wide at times. Like he overstrides and doesn't have as good of a base. So this is not like by any means a criticism or whatever of Jayden. It's just like a note. It's an observation to say his feet are a little narrower than I expected, but what it allows him to do is he stays super light. Like you can see when he transitions in a drill, say that's a rollout drill, the quickness of his feet to go from like, I'm up, I'm bouncing, like I'm in my quote unquote base, to I'm out and I'm on the move. And it also allows him to really step into the throws because he's not so wide in his base that he doesn't have any room to step. And so there's like these little technique things that I think are different than I expected. But I'm curious to talk to more people that work with him or know more than me about the details of why this actually might be the ideal for someone like him. And I'd be curious, as he continues to work with Cliff, does anything change? For instance, too, with his feet, his stride length and his drop. And I know we're getting pretty granular here, but like his stride length and his drop is not as wide and as big as I would have expected, and as some of the other quarterbacks appear to be. He's also so twitchy and so bouncy that maybe he's actually, if I were to take out a tape measure, I'd be like, oh, actually he is going as far. It just looks different because he floats in the air longer. But like you want to hit a certain point in your drop. And if those steps are a little more narrow, is that dot in the pocket of where he's supposed to be something that they've accounted for with the protection and things like that. So there's like all these little granular details that I just come away with a bunch of questions after one practice. But I would imagine like they're like, yep, nope, that's perfect. That's what we want. Because his feet were something that are complimented. His feet are something that are seen as a strength coming out. The polish that he has is a positive. So it was cool to kind of see him operate in a way that looks different, but considering how much, I mean, just to be blunt, like see how much bad quarterback play I've seen covering this team over the years, I'm like, hey, different's good. Let's do different. Because he's on balance, he's light, he's quick, and he's able to snap the ball out accurately and efficiently in a way that's really impressive. And you go, oh yeah, that's why this kid blows people away when they see him operate in person. Nevertheless, the brilliant season that he put on tape at LSU in 2023. There's more to talk about in terms of observations coming up in just a moment here on the Hoffman Show. Of course, we're on the Team 980. We're always live on the free Odyssey app and back with you on YouTube now that I am back in the saddle. But also today, 4:30, we're going to switch gears to the Wizards. It's Tuesday. We didn't forget that it's Vibe Check Tuesday. And I haven't been on the air since the Wizards got the number 2 pick in the NBA's draft lottery this weekend. So we will discuss the draft lottery coming up in a little bit. It's also WNBA opening day. So we'll get your vibe on that. And you'll hear from Shakira Austin at 5:45. We had so many great chats from Media Day. They're all available on our YouTube page at Craig Hoffman and at the Team 980. But we picked our favorite to save for you today on opening day. So Shakira Austin at 5:45. Pick 6 at 6. You'll hear from Quinn. You'll hear from Kingsbury. Hear from some of the players that talked today as well. And then our 5 biggest storylines entering the WNBA season at 6:30. So that's how the show lines up. More from training camp or OTAs, I beg your pardon. Today, next, it's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. the Hoffman Show. We are on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. More observations from day one of Commanders OTAs today. Was out there in person. Great chance to see how things are coming together for Washington in the earliest stage of the Dan Quinn era. And it's a good reminder, I think, that this is also the Cliff Kingsbury era, because there's some very, I would say, different, I'm guessing, kind of innovative ways that they practice, although maybe some of these are just, they've been around in a bunch of different ways, and they're innovative here because the coaches that have been here previously were extremely old school in their style of coaching and the way they approach things. But it was really interesting on a number of fronts. One, I just appreciated Dan Quinn coming to the podium and being like, today's a passing game day. This whole OTA spring period is very passing game oriented because there's just an extraordinary limit on contact. And to the point that, it's not like we ever watched a Ron Rivera practice and we're like, this is so physical. This is crazy. And there was a year where they got fined, I think, for too much contact. And they just extremely regulate what they do. And so Quinn is like, we are not going to take any risks. We're not going to work on the running game stuff. And even to the point that they took it to this quote-unquote extreme, and I've never seen this before, never heard of it, but it's not like I'm traveling to training camps around the country. But they actually brought the big guys in early. So they go through all their individual drills and kind of their, what I would call their on-air team drills, right? So offense only on one side, which is where I was and was watching, and whatever the heck they were doing on defense on the other side, I don't really know. I wasn't paying attention to that. Try to pay a little bit more attention to that next week. But there's no mixing, right? And then as soon as they wrap that up and they get into first a field goal thing, which, by the way, and I told you to remind me about the Nick Allegretti story, but I just remembered it. So real quick sidebar. They call field goal. Hey, we want our one field goal. It's our first team field goal unit to come up. And Nick Allegretti I'm on the sideline, and they're on the field that if you go to training camp as a Commanders fan, you're right off of that field. It's where they put the stands last year, right? So I'm standing in the usual spot where media is on that field. Allegretti and the offensive line had been working in the end zone to the left. They were lining up on the right side of the field, kicking towards the woods for field goal. Allegretti and Andrew Wiley take off in a full sprint. Field goal one. And Allegretti is screaming like a maniac. Running down the field. Wiley is doing the airplane bit, with his arms out wide running. And Allegretti is just arms pumping. I'm talking, his hand is going back past his head on the upstroke of swinging his arms like a nut, sprinting into field goal. And as he crosses midfield and he's now within 15 yards of where they're going to line up, 20 yards of where they're going to line up, he's like, I'm eligible, it's me, wiping down the front of the jersey because he's out towards the end of the line in their field goal unit. And that's my Nick Allegretti field goal story.
I've never seen a guy so pumped for an extra point in practice.
It's amazing.
Wow.
You want to talk about getting the energy and the enthusiasm and having
great energy.
A guy like Allegretti coming off a Super Bowl, coming off a couple of Super Bowls, hey, you got to bring the leadership, you got to bring the energy. That's part of why you're here. Nick Allegretti seems like a great dude.
Okay.
Then, when they were done, this was also funny. Wiley, again, takes off sprinting. Sam Cosmi had been ahead of the pack, and Wiley just gives him a whap right on the backside as he walks by. And Cosmi kind of looks at him like, you're going to pay for that later. Oh. I don't like you right now. Nice, solid thwack on the bum.
All right.
That's the O-line report for today.
Yeah. Like they had some fun.
Yeah. And that was also the last thing they did today to bring this story full circle. We've gone on a detour. Turns out it was a big loop back to the main street we were on. After they get through the on-air stuff and they get ready to go on 7-on-7, instead of keeping the big guys out there to watch or to have them do drills on the other side of the field and just kind of keep doing the same stuff they've been doing, it's like, y'all go inside and lift and let's get you out of here, as opposed to standing outside in the rain doing nothing. And I think that's great. Like, it's just an efficient way to practice. And so they ultimately continue this, what I would call efficient practice, with not just one side of the field doing 7-on-7s, because in training camp, typically you do 7-on-7 on one side and your O-line, D-line, one-on-ones on the other, which are basically not allowed. There's no, you couldn't do them with any meaning this time of year because of the contact rules. And so they used both sides of the field, and they were able to get a ton of extra reps, which is something Quinn talked about before practice that would happen is, and I think happened over the weekend, is they did what I would call double barrel 7-on-7. And, on one side of the field is it looked to be the ones and the threes. So Mariota is leading that offense with Terry, Jahan, et cetera. Bobby Wagner, Frankie Louvu, like the one defense is over there. The back seven was super rotaty. So who's their number one corner right now? I have no idea. Like St. Juice looked like he was out there for the first rep. Forbes is coming in on that side of the field. Quan's out there. Defoe's out there. So like that's kind of the crew. Jeremy Chin had a pick. Mariota threw like 3 or 4 picks today. Defense they'll turn you over. And Marcus Mariota is not afraid to throw a pick. So Mariota is on that side, and then Jayden Daniels is leading the other, and Jamin Davis was on the 2 field, which I thought was interesting. But he seems to be the 2 right now, and there's kind of starting linebacker rotation behind Wagner and Louvu, which makes total sense. And some of the other guys, are over there as well. Some of the younger guys, Sainer still amongst the notable names defensively over there. So you have 1s and 3s, 2s and 4s, and they're going at each other simultaneously. Cliff is calling the plays on the 1-3 side. Tavita Pritchard's got the walkie-talkie on the 2-4 side. Joe Witt's over with the 1 side. I didn't quite see who was kind of running the defense, but I'm assuming running all the same plays. It's all scripted, but they're able to get twice the reps in. And it's just a really efficient way to do everything. Also, they had a drill going back to the on-air portion where they'd have, obviously 4 or 5 receivers out running routes, and that meant 4 or 5 footballs were in the air, right? How often do we see like, oh, they're running routes on air and, maybe 1 or 2 guys get balls? Nope. Literally 4 quarterbacks standing shoulder to shoulder. Set hut, routes go. And 4 guys are in yellow jerseys throwing balls. And David Blau, the recently retired assistant quarterbacks coach, who's, younger probably than Marcus Mariota is, he's out there throwing bombs too. He's out there throwing rail routes to running backs out of the backfield. 30-yard drops in the bucket. Nice job, David Blau, on your rail routes today. So, like, sometimes you got 5 footballs in the air, and which means you're getting a meaningful rep on every snap for every player. And that's just a better way to practice. It's if you're out there running a route, you're probably not going to get a ball. Like, are you going to be as locked in? Probably not. You'd hope so as a professional, but let's practice, tracking that ball. Let's get that skill work in. And I think this is an old air raid thing. I was DMing with our guy Mark Bullock about it because he noticed some of this from rookie minicamp over the weekend and some of the clips that came out. But, to see kind of some of the different ways that these guys coach come together, and to know that Cliff is a guy who's big on efficiency, and this is a way that you see that efficiency come to life. The number of reps that you get compared to what they got last year is just higher, which is saying something, because remember last year when Bieniemy got here, the tempo at practice was so much faster, and it's a way to get more reps and be more efficient with your time without having to just be on the ball all the time. And it takes a little bit of the pressure off, which is nice as you're learning a new offense. And so I really appreciated the way they went about this. I really appreciated, and like another thing, just is kind of wrap this up, like the way that they coach, they're clearly very good teachers. And as someone who does coaching, someone who thinks about the art of coaching a lot, there was a drill that the wide receivers were doing for blocking, and they started off with, we're just going to stand here and we're going to get our hand placement and our body position right. Then it was, okay, now let's add a couple of steps into that, break it down, get into that position. Then, like, okay, we take even more steps and it's a full sprint into that position. And the layering and like the clear thought of how you go about teaching certain techniques, how you go about making sure that you have time on task, making sure that, as Quinn said in his pre-practice presser, that you learn the learners. Who needs more tape? Who needs more hands-on reps? Who needs to be told what to do? Understanding how these guys learn and having the options and abilities as teachers to ensure that they're going to have success is going to reap rewards. Now, whether that means that they're actually a good football team this year is still way too early to determine, because talent matters a lot. But what you have here is a coaching staff that clearly, I can tell you based off one practice, not to mention everything that they've said, understands how to maximize what they've got from a teaching standpoint. And that is a far, far cry, I think, from any coach that I've covered for the Commanders, but certainly the group that was here the last 4 years. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. When we get back, it is a Vibe Check Tuesday. 301-230-0980 is the phone number. 301-230-0980. The Washington Wizards won the second overall pick in the NBA draft this weekend. It's the slot that they theoretically should have gotten, although the other three teams that were in lottery up 4 slots, 1, 3, and 4, those were all upsets. So the Wizards, better luck than anybody else in the top 4. What do you think about the Wizards getting the number 2 pick in the NBA draft? We'll share our thoughts and take yours on a Vibe Check Tuesday next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're live on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980 as well. Coming up at 5 o'clock, more on the Commanders off-season and kind of what we expect and also what's going on right now. We might have a guest, if not, very cool insight from Logan that we'll share with you coming up at 5 o'clock. So more football at 5. 5:30 today. I am going to talk about the Dan Quinn shirt thing. It's probably not going to be the segment you expect. I'll tell you that right now. Some of y'all are like, oh God, Craig's going to say this, or some of y'all are like, I don't know what he's going to say. It's probably not going to be what you. Just drop your expectations and listen at 5:30. That's all I'm going to say. But for right now, it is a Vibe Check Tuesday, and we would love to take some of your calls at 301-230-0980 on the Washington Wizards and the fact that they have the second pick in what is thought to be the worst NBA draft in ever. I saw a tweet earlier today, Anthony, that said they, whoever it was, like I think it was an NBA GM, told whoever this person was that they're like the top pick in this draft they would have is like the number 10 pick in a normal draft.
Number 10?
Yeah. I've seen that. I've seen whatever. I don't know. I've also seen Will Dawkins say he actually thinks that there's multiple All-Stars in this draft. Every NBA draft in the history of the league has had at least one All-Star. So chances are there's going to be at least one. I know it looks bad right now, and we certainly hope it's whoever the Wizards take it to, but like it's definitely not the best. And it's also funny because every mock draft I read has a different dude going to. And every Wizards fan that I follow on Twitter or get exposed to on Twitter wants a different guy too.
It's a little concerning.
It's concerning. I feel better than I should about it because I genuinely think Will Dawkins is one of the best scouts in the NBA.
Okay.
Which is helpful. The whole being good at your job when your job is scouting thing. Like, Winger was brought in to run the ship, run the entire operation. Winger wanted Dawkins because when it comes to building a basketball team, both from a scouting and like, hey, we need to do these things, there are few better in the league than Will Dawkins. And I think that's what Michael Winger thought. And I don't know that he's wrong on that. I mean, look at last year's draft. Like, Bilal Coulibaly looks to be like a very, very good pick at number, turned out to be 7, right? They were at 8. They traded up because other teams were trying to trade up to take Coulibaly, and they were able to convince Indiana, like, hey, just drop back 1 so you guys can get Jarris Walker and don't trade with these other teams, and voila. So the thing is about a bad draft, it doesn't matter how bad the draft is if you're right. It does seem like Alex Sarr, who played in the NBL in Australia last year, but is a French big man, 19 years old, 6'11", 217 pounds. He's got a 7'4" wingspan. He seems to be the number 1 guy. And it is remarkable that the Hawks win this lottery. They had a 3% chance of getting the number 1 pick, and that 3% paid off for them. And the Hawks, like, he's the right kind of guy for them because he's kind of a Clint Capella-y type of player. I don't think he's ever going to be like a great NBA player, but he's big, he's athletic, he'll roll to the rim, he's a good defender, apparently. And for a team with Trae Young and trying to figure out the DeJounte Murray stuff and what they do, like, the best version of Trae Young, like, Trae Young and the Hawks made the Eastern Conference Finals that one year, and like he and Capella were rolling. Like, if I want to salvage Trae Young and I'm Atlanta, this seems like a good way to do it. Or if I want to trade Trae Young for future assets and DeJounte Murray and just start over and use Sarr as kind of a building block, like, I think the Hawks have good options. Now, are the Wizards going to potentially look at that whole situation and be like, we would like to come up? I don't know. But here are some of the names that are being considered for number 2. Donovan Clingan, a big man out of UConn, 7'2". He's 20 years old. He's enormous, and he had a great season at UConn. This one is super interesting because this dude got hurt the other day. I don't know if the extent of the injury is out yet, but Nikola Topic, who's Serbian. This pick is, by the way, from the Nets in the James Harden trade. Houston wins the third pick lottery. I should say, if he goes 3, the mock draft I'm looking at has him going 3. But he's 18 years old, 6'6", 200 pounds. Got good size. We'll see. He's got to become a way better shooter. He's a guy that you read the scouting report and you're like, wait, why is this guy a top guy again? But he does have some playmaking ability, whatever. Rob Dillingham, Kentucky freshman. He's only 6'1". Just doesn't seem to be the right kind of player for Washington, who values positional size. Mattis Buzelis, who was in the G League last year. You got Reed Shepard, who's a guard from Kentucky, can shoot it a little bit. I don't know that he's really in the mix there. You got Zachary Richer. I need to work on my pronunciation here. Another French guy, played in the French pro leagues last year, but 6'8". He's a little Koulibaly-ish. Big, long Frenchman. He's got some flashes of shot making. So he's in the mix. And then the guy that I am really, really intrigued by is Stephon Castle out of UConn. And the mock draft, just so people have an idea here, I'm looking at the Ringers mock draft right now. And they've got Castle going 10th. But the reason I'm intrigued by Castle is he's 6'6", 190. Played in a really good program in Connecticut.
I think he measured out to 6'2" yesterday.
No, that was a mistake. They released the numbers today.
Okay, cool.
So he's 6'5.5" without shoes, a.k.a. he's 6'7", NBA height, right? So he actually gained an inch. That would have been crazy. This dude's 6'6". Now he's 6'2". No, there were some mistakes with the numbers yesterday that they fixed today. So he's 6'6", 6'7", right? Which always, by the way, and I don't feel like a lot of people know that. When you hear NBA height, it's your height in shoes. And the answer, when you're like, wait, the rest of us, we go to the doctor, we take our shoes off, we get our height measured, and without shoes. Why do they do basketball heights in shoes? And the answer, do you know the answer?
I do not.
The answer is because you play basketball in shoes.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Kind of. It's kind of dumb, but it's kind of brilliant.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's your NBA heights fun fact of the day. If you ever run into a 6'1" guard and you're a 5'11" fella and you're like, wait, that guy's my size. Yeah, all you got to do is go put shoes on and you can be 6'1" too. There's probably a joke in there that any females listening in DC dating circles want to make, but that's a different story. Point is, Castle's 6'6". He's got a 6'8" wingspan. He struggled to make perimeter shots in college, but they did their three-point shooting drill yesterday at the Combine, Anthony. And you want to know who was the best shooter in that one particular drill at the Combine?
Bronny James?
No, he was second, actually.
Oh.
Stephon Castle.
Oh, he's number 1.
Yeah.
What did he
get? I think it was 71% or something like that. So what that tells me is there's a shot somewhere in there, right? And this is where the Wizards' current state of affairs makes me really excited, because they have the player development staff to take a guy with some potential and be like, okay, if you can do this in a drill on air, how do we get that shot sped up and comfortable for you at an NBA game speed? And it might take years, but they got time. What you can't teach is 6'6" with a 6'8" wingspan and instincts. And he's got that. And I think also Washington is going to build in the Minnesota-Oklahoma City defensive length kind of mold. And you've got Koulibaly, long, athletic, gangly arms. Why not add Castle to that? So that's not me saying they need to take Stephon Castle. I have not watched almost any of these guys yet. It's kind of my project for the rest of this week and early next week. It's a lot harder with number 2 pick. Normally I could watch 1 or 2 guys and be like, we're set. Not this year. I'm going to have to watch like 10 guys, and it's not going to be the easiest. But to kind of get a feel for who they are and their games, et cetera. See what kind of French league actions on YouTube. Good chance for me to practice my French for my trip in August. But anyway, Castle, his games will be easy to find. He played at UConn. He's a guy that I'm super duper intrigued by. 301-230-0980. We can take your calls next. It's a Vibe Check Tuesday. How do you feel about the Wizards having the number 2 pick in the 2024 NBA draft? And we get back to the Commanders and OTAs coming up at 5 o'clock. 301-230-0980 is the phone number. 301-230-0980. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app and streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Our pal Mitch Tischler is going to join us coming up at 5 o'clock. Stood with Mitch in the rain out in Ashburn today at Commanders OTAs. We'll ask him what he saw, what he liked, and his first impressions of Jayden Daniels and more coming up at 5 p.m. But right now, talking to you at 301-230-0980, taking your calls on how you feel about the Wizards getting the number 2 pick in the 2024 NBA draft, and if you have anybody that you particularly would like to see them take as we sit here early on in the process. We'll get a lot more on these prospects, obviously, as time goes on. Let's start off with Robert in Fairfax. Robert, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, Craig, thanks for taking my call. You can hear me, right?
Yep, I got you.
Yeah. Okay, so we agree there's no clear-cut number 1 pick in this draft, right?
Yeah, that's what everyone says.
Number 1. I think the worst thing the Wizards could do is try to reach for, like, someone you think is, like, number 1. Because that's how you pick guys like Anthony Bennett, which Minnesota or whoever picked, 2013. There was no number 1 in that draft. They tried to find one. They picked the guy with the highest ceiling, whatever, and he turned out to be a complete bust. So I think go with the safe pick. I think to me it's obvious. It's that center from UConn.
Klingon,
the dude is a legit 7'2". He's legit 7'2". He can shoot threes. He has not yet realized his potential. You just kind of look at his body. He's going to fill out his frame even more. He's only played 1 year of college basketball. I think he's got a high floor and a high ceiling. You just plug him in. You don't even worry about the center position for the next 10 years.
I mean, that would be nice. Thanks for the call, Robert. Although I will vehemently disagree with one thing that you said. And this, I'm glad you brought up the 2013 draft, because this is kind of the thing with this draft. There was a number 1 pick in the 2013 NBA draft. He went 15th. His name is Giannis Antetokounmpo. And that's kind of what we're talking about here. Because you can say Anthony Bennett, who went to Cleveland, he was an all-time bust. It was Bennett, it was Oladipo, who kind of had his career ravaged due to injury, but has been a good player, and at his peak was, I believe he made an all-star team. If not, he did. He did, right? Yeah. Otto Porter obviously went 3rd to the Wizards, and dang. Cody Zeller, Alex Len, who's still playing in the league, by the way, even though it feels like his career was like a bust. He's been out of the league for 10 years, right? No, he's still playing. Nerlens Noel was a big boomer bust guy, ultimately wound up not ever able to really stay healthy. KCP's in that draft. CJ McCollum's in that draft. Steven Adams is in that draft. Remember Shabazz Muhammad? Huge high school recruit, went to UCLA, never wound up working out. Kelly Olynyk, but Giannis is sitting there at 15. And so, and like Dennis Schroeder, there's guys in that draft that turned out to be good players. Gobert is in that draft. That's not, I was about to say, no, that was not the Draymond draft. He was already in the league at that point. But I mean, shoot, Raul Neto went 47th in that draft, and he played for a couple of years in the league. But the point is, is that a good draft? No. The top 5 of that draft has maybe the worst combined career of a top 5 ever. Bennett, Oladipo, Porter, Zeller, Len. Is Len the last guy playing? Is Cody Zeller still bopping around? Otto just retired. Oladipo is, I think, retired finally medically. Bennett's long been out of the league. It's certainly got to be the worst top 3 in recent memory, if not ever. But Giannis is like a top 30, certainly top 50. And depending on how the next 5-6 years goes for him, potentially top 30 guy all time. So I just think that we need to be realistic about the fact that while there may seem to be no logical answer here in terms of number 1, it's why you scout, and it's why sometimes taking a risk on a guy is worth it, because if you can develop him, then it can work out in the end. Let's go to our guy Tony, Aries Tony. What's up, Tony? How you doing?
Hey, Craig, how you doing, man? I wish if Atlanta slip and don't take Alexander Sarr, that's what we need. We need a big man, man. We don't need no more wingers and all that. We just got Koulibaly last year. I think we need a big man that like a rim protector, like Sarr or somebody like that. What's your take on that?
I mean, I just think that they need everything. Like, I would not overthink this and think about need here, because realistically, like, you are looking at a team that is hopefully reinventing itself entirely over the next, 2-3 years. And if that's the case, then every position you have is currently open for upgrade. The one guy that you correctly assess is like a huge part of the future is Koulibaly, but they got 2 wings at least that you need. Like, if you look at in modern NBA basketball, shooting guard, small forward, power forward are all like wing type of positions, slightly different body types, whatever. But like they can duplicate really long athletic guys with offensive upside who are good defenders. Like, you can't have enough of those dudes on your team. So Tony, like, do they need a big man? Yes, but they also need a point guard, and they also need another wing, and they also need shooting, because that is the current state of the Washington Wizards. So I would just, if I'm them, I look at who I think is some combination of the most sure to be a good player and the highest potential to be a great player, and I don't give a rip what position that dude plays.
Would you be opposed if a team step up and make give us a out of the sky deal and for some veterans that would come in and make an immediate impact on this team? Would you think about making a trade for that just as well?
I mean, I would consider everything would be the short answer. The longer answer would be it would have to depend on the veteran and kind of what they're looking at. I'm not looking to rush this, because if it's a young veteran that I think can help me in 3 years, yes. If it's an older veteran, I'm not that interested. There's part of me that's like, I know everyone thinks this draft sucks, so like, can I get some extra picks? Like, does someone want to trade out and take on a contract and I get an extra first rounder? Because if you tell me I got 2 shots to try to get Giannis because he's floating around somewhere in this draft, I'll take the extra shots when everybody else doesn't want them. So, like, I think, Tony, the beauty and the curse of where the Wizards are right now is they can do anything. Makes it really hard for us to talk about and predict, but it also leaves everything on the table, and I think that's ultimately a good thing for them.
I just hope they get it right. Thanks a lot, Craig.
Yeah, hey, that's 2 of us, and I think a lot more. Thanks, Tony. We get back. Our buddy Mitch Tischler joins us. What did he see as he stood out in the rain in Ashburn today? More on day 1 of Commanders OTAs next on the Team 980. live as well on the free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. It is just after 5 o'clock, which means it is time for Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
Today, it's our pleasure to welcome back to the show my guy, Mitch Tischler, of course, the Beltway Football Podcast. Mitchell, how are you, my friend? Good to talk to you for the second time today. This time, it's not raining.
It's not raining outside. Did you get a chance to get home and put on some dry clothes, or are you sitting there in the studio freezing your butt off wet?
No, I am doing the show from home today because I was like, I'm going home to change, and if I have time to get into the studio, great, and if not, I have fancy microphones and cameras and lights in my home, and that is the choice that I've made.
For what it's worth, I have lots of fancy lights, cameras, and microphones in my home as well.
Yeah, I mean, they're great. We've done shows where you've been on camera with us, and it looks amazing and sounds great. So I can confirm. But, Mitchell, as we stood there in the rain, nobody cared about our soaking wet clothes or our general well-being. No, they want to know about the football. This is our first chance to see a full team practice under Dan Quinn as you and JP and everybody else walked away from Ashburn today. What's the thought that sticks out the most for you?
Actually, I mean, there are a couple. I think in the non-Jayden Daniels division, which I think deserves its own discussion, was the fact that this was a voluntary OTA and just about every single player was there. And I think that says a lot to what Dan Quinn and ultimately Adam Peters were trying to build here. And on top of them all being here, folks were bought in. You know, they do this fun little drill at the beginning of practice to get energy going. And you see Cliff Kingsbury, who had on the big, big brim, I guess, almost sombrero hat right in the middle there, kind of getting the guys going. And he talked about afterwards how much he loved that drill and how much juice it brought to the practice field. And you saw guys from the very get-go of practice be moving quick, moving fast, and getting through drills. And it was a joy to see some real football on the field today.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think it was really cool to see that juice, that energy. You see a number of interceptions, which we can talk about, of course, and the energy of the defensive guys, especially on those. But when you see that, kind of the structure of practice from the double-barreled 7-on-7s to whatever, is it the kind of thing that you're just like, oh, this is different, or would you say, like, this is better? Is it different in a way that matters in a positive way in terms of the structure and all that kind of stuff?
You know, it's interesting. I think that when Ron Rivera was here, I think the structure was relatively similar in terms of trying to get as many reps in as possible. But I think the speed with which things ran today was better and kind of more effective. You saw guys go from, quarterbacks throwing to coaches, quarterbacks then throwing to receivers, quarterbacks then throwing to receivers along the way. And when the running backs left the quarterbacks, they went and did their own sort of blocking/catching drills with the tight ends. And I just think you kind of saw there wasn't a ton of time where the guys were set with their individual groups. They were spending times with kind of two groups would be together, working together on, kind of duo type things. And I think that goes a long way towards kind of ingratiating everyone, on the team, and also kind of getting collaborative effort from coaching staff, from the coaches and the players as well on the field.
Mitch Tischler, of course, the co-host of the Beltway Football Podcast, is with us here on the Hoffman Show. So you mentioned Jayden Daniels deserves his own section. We have now reached the Jayden Daniels section of the program. He's definitively QB2 for whatever that's worth on a day where there's equal number of reps between QB2 and QB1. It's just Marcus Mariota went first, and he got to throw to Terry and all those guys. And who knows, when we're not there tomorrow, that could flip, and maybe they'll even flip it in front of us for the media next week. But in terms of how Jayden actually looked, what stood out to you? I guess if you were at rookie minicamp, your second time getting to see him throw in person, but first time getting to see all that with the full group of veterans around him.
Yeah, I mean, I think first to start with Jayden being QB2, across the board you saw clearly Dan Quinn is going to make these rookies earn it. None of the rookies were working with their number one group there. They all were kind of working in the 2s, 3s, and or 4s along the way. And I think that's just, an old school football mindset where no one's given anything. But as far as watching Jayden Daniels, I think the most impressive thing is just kind of his ball placement and it being kind of in the right place at the right time for his different receivers. Going back the past couple seasons, whether it was Sam Howell or it was Ryan Fitzpatrick or Carson Wentz, you saw the ball on the ground a lot early on in camp. And that was both in OTAs and in mini camp and then ultimately into training camp. And the different quarterbacks talked about different reasons, that it was happening, whether it was getting a feel for the receivers or watching receivers run the ball, run different routes, different ways, and kind of, needing to understand everything that happens. You realize kind of the malarkey of those kinds of, excuses as you watch a rookie in Jayden Daniels work with his wide receivers ostensibly for the first time and being able to complete the ball at a regular clip with them. And then when you start looking at him getting into the 7-on-7 drills, there are a couple throws that just really stood out to me. One was on the left side. He threw a perfect back shoulder ball to who was it? It was to Dax Milne, who went up and he ended up bobbling it and kind of catching it on the ground when he was out of bounds. But the ball was just, high and away from the receiver and in a position where only his guy was going to get it. No one else was. There was another ball on the right side of the field where he kind of had a mini scramble out of the pocket. And I believe it was Bryson Tremaine was working back to kind of give him a look, and he just fired a ball to the sideline, again, high into the outside, where only Bryson would have been able to make the play there. And it's just, it's little things like that where you see him put the ball in the right place where, it's either his guy or nobody, or if he's throwing kind of the slants or the ins or whatever kind of route these guys are running, they're catching it in stride with the ability to go and make plays on the back end. And that's an important thing. And it's not something that we've seen from the quarterbacks here in Washington, even though it's minicamp or OTAs and you should only take so much away from it. The fact that it's happening now bodes well to it happening on Sundays as well.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And I think it's also a credit. And again, this is in addition to, this is not taking anything away from Jayden, but it's a credit to Cliff. It really seems like they have a good understanding of what these guys can stomach. And Dan was actually asked about this before practice in terms of how do you know if you put too much on a guy's plate? And Dan's like, you just give him the reps and it becomes pretty self-evident. But it seems like, Mitch, there's not a lot of pre-snap confusion and, their execution level's pretty high offensively. It seems like they've really kind of tempoed the amount of information that they've given these guys really well. And it's different than last year where it seems like EB was screaming his head off every 5 seconds at someone for screwing something up. And while it was really fun for us at the time to be like, oh, look at the intensity of Eric Bieniemy, it turned out guys not knowing what to do was a sign of things to come.
And I think you saw last year the enthusiasm came from the coaching staff. I think this year you're seeing the enthusiasm come from within, being more intrinsic for these players. But Cliff Kingsbury talked afterwards about kind of trying to step Jayden through the process and not put too much on his plate. And to me, especially being, a guy who loves O-line play and all that, what I loved hearing Cliff Kingsbury talk about was how far ahead of the game Jayden was in figuring out protections. And that's such a big step, and to me shows so much maturity from the quarterback, because it's not something that shows up on the stat sheets necessarily on Sundays, being able to put your lineman in the right position, but having the maturity and the dedication to understand the importance of learning that early on in the playbook so that he can work, more collaboratively, closely with Tyler Biadasz and whoever else ends up playing center on the offensive line, speaks to why they went after, why they drafted a guy like Jayden. Because even when Carson was here and, last year Sam Howell clearly had issues, figuring out the protections, those quarterbacks relied so much on the centers to set the O-line and set the blocking schemes. And ultimately, I think we saw with the, time to throw for both of those quarterbacks, that didn't really work particularly well because, sometimes you had the quarterbacks thinking one thing and the line thinking another. And so I was super impressed with that from Jayden. Hearing him talk last week, watching him on the field here, you're seeing a mature young man and a guy who I think is mature beyond his years when it comes to being a quarterback. And, you hope that all of that, translates to Sundays, when it's important. But I think he's showing you that he's putting the building blocks in the right place and, kind of not worried about figuring out when he's going to throw the 9 ball, figuring out how he's going to get time so he can ultimately read a defense and get to the 9 ball. And I think that goes a long way.
Mitch Tischler, co-host of the Beltway Football Podcast, with us. More on Daniels in a second. But since you mentioned O-line, and obviously those guys left the field early today, so there's not a lot to talk about there. But did you see Allegretti sprint into field goal?
Right. I mean, I think that
that was amazing.
You saw Bobby Wagner coming out of that pre-practice drill, sprinting over to the practice field. Bobby Wagner's been in the league forever. He's a Hall of Famer. He doesn't need to do any of this. But the fact that he is doing it shows you that. And, you can't read a whole lot on O-line, just going back to Allegretti and Biadasz and, Cosme and ultimately Brandon Coleman and all those guys. They're in shorts and a T-shirt. You can get a feel for how their footwork is, their quickness, body style, stuff like that. But until they get to those one-on-ones in minicamp or training camp, where they're, going one-on-one against that D-line, that's when you'll really get a feel for it. But I will say just, I felt better looking at Nick Allegretti, Tyler Biadasz, and Sam Cosme being kind of the inside 3 for that O-line. And ultimately, Cosme, after practice, talked about kind of the collaborative discussions that they're having, and that's been a theme across the offense is the collaboration. But, Sam mentioned that you bring in guys like Allegretti and Biadasz and even Dieter, who are, more veteran NFL players. They've kind of been there, done that. They can discuss, hey, this is the best way that I like to attack, a double team where I have to rub off and get to a linebacker. This is what I need from you when I'm doing X, Y, or Z. And I think you're just seeing, as opposed to guys learning together on the fly, you're seeing guys who have a strong base knowledge and have a kind of a basement floor, that we know what they can be. And hopefully as a group, they can meld and gel and get together and be a more cohesive offensive line.
I mean, that's like great real analysis, Mitch. I just enjoyed watching Allegretti act like a gigantic child. That's really all I was talking about. The fact that he ran down the field. Full speed.
I love Nick Gates last year for all that. Nick Gates was the king of energy and, blocking through the whistle and getting a cheap block as the guy's trying to get into the end zone.
Yeah.
And all that stuff is awesome. And, you love to see it because I want my O-linemen to be, the energy bringers. I want them to be gritty. I want them to be the guys that are going around headbutting everybody, a la Trent Williams when, he was leading that offensive line when he was here. But ultimately, we need solid pass pro and,
yes,
guys who are dogs in the run game. And I think we have a lot more of that on this offensive line than we've had in years past.
Yeah, joy between the whistles, or like before the whistle, dog when set hut happens. That's what we're looking for. Mitch Tischler with us, Beltway Football Podcast. Check it out anywhere you get your pods. Daniels looked to have a pretty clean day. I think he might have thrown one. It was hard to watch because there was 7-on-7 happening on both sides. Marcus Mariota, on the other hand, must have thrown 3 or 4 picks. Are you like, oh boy, or are you like, hey, that's that defense we heard about as you watch Jeremy Chin get a pick and a couple of other guys obviously come down with balls wearing burgundy jerseys today on the defensive side on the ones versus one side of the field?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone who has a kind of realistic view of this quarterback situation knows what's ultimately going to happen, come whatever it is, the September 12th first game of the season. Marcus Mariota is gonna do that. There were a couple plays that I think were on the quarterback and a couple that were on the defense, kind of making really good plays. You mentioned the Jeremy Chin pick. That was a really nice play by him to step in front of, I believe it was Jahan over there. I'm not sure, but I think that ultimately we're going to have to, take what we see out of Marcus Mariota with a grain of salt, because if things go as planned, he won't see the field one time this season.
No, yes, 100%. And it's like, yep, he's QB1 for right now, but talk to me in August when these things actually matter. Anything else in particular that you really either want to follow up on or that you want to see that you didn't see today outside of O-line, D-line work when we, keep returning to Ashburn once a week over the course of the next month? Like, what's after you've gotten this taste, like, what's on the to-do list now for you?
Well, one other standout from today before I kind of get to that was Luke McCaffrey. And
yeah,
I guess
a big long touchdown amongst other things.
By it. He's just such a veteran. He looks like an old vet on the field, and he looks like a guy who's been around football since he was 3 years old. And obviously between his father and his brother, he has been, but he looks like he belongs. And I think that he could be a real integral part of this passing game, because I think he frees up Jahan Dotson a lot to run more on the outside, and garners a lot more attention over the middle than some of the guys that we've seen run there. And I hope that it continues as we go. To me, the biggest thing is today was the first day of OTAs. It's easy to get all the buy-in from all the players and have folks excited about being on the practice field and, seeing them bring the juice and do all the little things. I want to kind of continue to see that happen as, the off season continues. And ultimately, one thing I loved today was Sam Cosmi talked about, there was one play where before the play even started, he had Bobby Wagner calling out. He's like, "Hey, guard's gonna pull." And Sam said, like, in my head, I was actively trying to not show off that I was doing that. And he loved the fact that after the play, he was able to go over to Bobby, and Bobby was like, "Hey man, this is what I saw. This is how I knew." And I think I want to see that kind of continue to expand. I want to see some of these vets really take these young guys under their arms. It's kind of a cliche thing to say, but that was just a huge piece that I think has been missing from this Commanders organization, and that's kind of the player-led leadership. John Allen kind of took that over by default, but that's not really the kind of guy that he is. That's not what he really wants to be doing per se in the locker room in terms of being the vocal leader. And I think bringing in a bunch of these vets that they have, between Zach Ertz and Bobby Wagner, and even when you start going down the rest of the defense, I think that all will go a really long way in terms of helping to build the camaraderie, but also helping, control the, I would say, in-house shenanigans that we've seen on the field, sometimes having those guys be able to step up and be leaders.
No, I think that's a great point, and to see how they continue to bring that energy. But you go back to where some of this comes from. It's Pete Carroll's school, if you will, and obviously DQ and Bobby were there together. Like, they know that it works. They've won a championship doing it this way, and it's cool to see it carry over. And kind of the blends of coaching styles too, the efficiency of Cliff, the energy of DQ, the intensity of Joe Witt. You see it all come together, and as long as that concoction stays stable, then it's a good thing to watch for going forward. Mitch Tischler with us here on the Hoffman Show. You can check out the Beltway Football Podcast on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Mitch, always great to chat. Thanks for your time. Always great to see you, and I guess I'll see you in Ashburn again next week.
Looking forward to it. Thanks so much for having me.
Of course. That is Mitch Tischler with us here on the Hoffman Show. Just a real quick follow-up story that I think DQ told last week. I'm now not remembering where this is from, but I'm pretty sure it's from Dan Quinn in an interview he did, or maybe this is from Commander's Log or something. But they had their first big team meeting, and offense sits together, defense sits together. And Dan apparently was like, nah, every offensive guy sits next to a defensive guy. Every defensive guy sits next to an offensive guy. And that way they get to know each other. And when Mitch tells that or relays that story that Sam Cosmi told after practice about how Bobby Wagner was able to read something off of him, and then Sam goes after the play to Bobby and is like, what did you see? How did you know? That's big time. To have that relationship already built in. Those are two of your team leaders. They should know each other. They should be comfortable talking. And it's just these little things that matter over the course of a season, because the little things stack up and become big things. If you fix Sam Cosmi's stance, maybe a key play at some point on a big third down or a big second down that avoids a big third down because you get a first down running the football that Sam Cosmi doesn't tip. That could win you a game, and nobody ever knows. Sam Cosmi probably doesn't even know. This happens in November, and he just is in a better stance because of what happened in May, and Bobby Wagner and he having that relationship to talk about it. These are the little things that are impossible to quantify that matter in a major way in the NFL, where the margins are so small. And so to take every step to try to make sure that your team is as close as possible, that they're helping each other as much as possible, is the kind of thing that you just love to hear, because it's heartening, but it also matters in terms of the results. And so, a cool story from Cosme today. Appreciate Mitch relaying it from after practice. Mitch Tischler, Beltway Football Podcast, available wherever you get yours. When we get back here on the Hoffman Show, Dan Quinn did address the shirt he wore over the weekend today. How big of a deal is it? And whose fault is it for whatever deal that it is? We'll dive into those questions and try to answer them next on the Team 980. Hoffman Show. First, Colombia, where I got to see the Aces preseason game against the Puerto Rican national team. Very cool experience. And I'll talk about that more a little bit later on in the show, about 45 minutes from now, or an hour, I guess, from now. We talk about our biggest stories heading into the WNBA season. But point is, like, I was out of pocket. I was on vacation. And all of a sudden, I start getting text messages Saturday afternoon about a shirt that Dan Quinn was wearing to his press conference around rookie minicamp. And it is certainly something you've probably seen by now if you are a DC sports fan enough to be listening to sports radio here on this Tuesday. You probably have some connection to the online sports world, and whether it's on Facebook, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Twitter, whether it's in a group chat. Someone has sent you the picture of Dan Quinn wearing a shirt that says Commanders and the feathers from a native headdress that used to adorn the side of the old team logo. And my first thought was, this is very stupid. Why would he do this? But really, I don't have a lot of thoughts beyond that. And this comes from someone who staunchly defended the decision to change the name because they should have. The reason the Washington Commanders are called the Washington Commanders is because Dan Snyder's terrible at picking team nicknames. The reason they are not called the team name that was used for nearly 90 years is because a large swath of Native Americans, the group of people who the term is talking about, find it horrendously offensive. Some say it's the equivalent to the N-word for black people or whatever other racial slur that you would like. Obviously, that is not a universally held opinion. That is not something it's not something that's universal, because there are thousands of Native American tribes, and they are all separate and different entities with different languages and different relations to modern American life and the U.S. government and any litany of factors that are far too complicated, convoluted, and complex to try to break down with any intelligence, both with my level of expertise on said subjects and on a sports radio show. But point is, there's a large group of Native Americans who find the term offensive, who find the term racist, and you just don't need that to be your team name. It's really that simple. You can find something that brings a group of people together that is completely non-controversial for those reasons. And if your team name is controversial because a lot of people think it's stupid and seemingly the best abbreviation is commies, that is far better than the reasons why the previous team name was divisive. So the fact that the coach then all of a sudden wears a T-shirt referencing the Native American imagery of the old name seems tremendously problematic, right? Right? Yeah, you got to jump on him. Cancel culture. Here you go, Hoffman. Nah. It's a silly mistake by Dan Quinn. It's a huge problem by the organization, but that problem is years old and not, I think, remotely reflective of DQ. I know that there are folks within the organization that when they saw Dan wearing the shirt, wish that they had said, like, hey, Dan, this is, I'm sure you're just wearing this to show, pay homage to the history of the team, which there's absolutely, to be clear, zero problem with that. And in fact, I think it's a wonderful gesture by Dan Quinn in terms of his intention, even if his impact was something different. But that's not the way you should do it. We'll get you a Joe Gibbs shirt. We'll get you a Hog shirt. We'll make you a Darryl Green shirt. Like, we'll find ways to do this. Don't do that. And there are folks that wish that they would have said something to Dan just to kind of save Dan the controversy and save the organization the controversy. But the problem is not new in that the organization, in an effort to try not to offend anybody, to remain neutral, to continue to wink and nod to the fans who desperately want the old name to come back, even though everybody, including Josh Harris, has said it's not going to happen. The intensity of the desire not to offend those people, your most diehard of fans who, if you just put a good product out there, will certainly follow you anyway, that prevents them from saying the quiet part out loud, which is, yeah, we changed the name because it was at least a little, if not very, racist. And so we're going a different direction, and that part while we're still going to honor the things that happened while we were called that name, we're not going to do that. But for Dan Quinn got here in January, and certainly he's been paying attention to the league. Dan Quinn is a very smart man. He is no dummy. And should he have known better, that he would not necessarily that he would be offending a lot of people in like the full breadth of it, to all of us, whether you agree with certain parts of these arguments or not. Like if you live in Washington, D.C., and you are a sports radio either producer, creator, me, or listener, you know all the different sides of the argument. Dan Quinn hasn't lived here. He hasn't lived that life. This is a new thing for him. And so he should have probably known better, but like I don't think there's a lot of depth to him not knowing better. And I also think this genuinely came from a good place, and thus I'm not going to make a big deal out of the Dan Quinn part of this. And I actually agree with what Quinn said today, which is the shame of this is not that we have to have this discussion yet again, because we don't. The name's not coming back. Native American imagery is not coming back, although that's a little more complicated on a general sense, and I'll get to that in a moment. But like, we don't need to have that conversation again. And it's taken away from the actual things that they are doing on the field to try to win you back, the fan base that is left, not because of a name change, but because the product sucks. And that was what Dan Quinn said today, and I actually really appreciated what DQ said today.
I think one of the parts of me, taking this job, I was excited to bridge, the past and the present, and what a cool, privilege that is to do. And I also recognized there's a lot of layers to that. So it was a great lesson for me. And what I really hate is that any attention that would have been taken away from these rookies and like this awesome crew. So, no one wants to do that, but great lesson.
Humility, grace goes a long way. And those are two words that have not been associated with this organization for a long time. And frankly, had they been led by people with humility and grace over the last 2.5 decades prior to the people who are currently in charge, who I think actually, like, even Josh Harris, who is a ruthless private equity billionaire, has bounds more humility and grace than the previous dude who owned the team and the previous people that owned it. Jason Wright, who has at times stepped in it in a major way because he, wants to be really defensive of Carson Wentz or whatever things that Jason has done over the years that have been very public, large, and forward-facing. Jason's still got a lot more humility and a lot more grace. And I know this because I've talked to him about some of these things, and he's like, yeah, I definitely wish I would have handled that differently. And like the ability to look at yourself and be like, yep, nope, learned a lesson here. Got it, cool, good, and keep things moving is how you win people over. It's how you prevent things from blowing up into gigantic national stories and things blow over a lot quicker. And so, like, am I talking about this today because it's a local story and it's a big deal and Dan addressed it? Yeah. But am I going to talk about it tomorrow? No. Am I going to talk about it ever again unless Dan does something similarly, careless? No, because like if you do stuff that's careless multiple times, and the story is the carelessness, that or you were lying and you were sinister and you were actually trying to do something different all along. And I don't think that's who Dan Quinn is. I think Dan was trying to do exactly what he said. I think he was trying to bridge the gap between the current administration while giving a shout to the previous glorious parts of this organization's past who deserve it. Which is why when I hear Doc filling in for me and I see that he says, like, I loved this because I felt seen. I don't begrudge Doc that. I don't begrudge a Darryl Green, a Joe Jacoby, a Joe Theismann, or whoever who felt seen by this organization that has largely ignored them or used them to cover up for other malfeasance and nonsense over the last 25 years, for being the proverbial lipstick on the pig. I don't begrudge, and I'll use Doc because he said it here, like, I don't begrudge Doc that. But if you're Quinn, I think you need to, like, go get a picture of Doc giving the high five back in the day. That's how you honor Doc. Or a shirt with the hogs on it. A shirt with the giant pig note. Like, there's ways you can do it. Now, I also wonder what the NFL had to say on a purely business perspective because that was an unlicensed shirt. It's not something the Commanders approve. So you got some business stuff that I'm sure some people on that side of the house weren't exactly psyched about. But at the end of the day, I think Dan's mission is good. And considering he just got here and most of his time has not been spent on history and, making sure he knows every detail of every controversy of the last 10 years, it's been scouting football players and putting together a plan to make them good at football. I don't begrudge him. I got no problem with it. It's really not that big of a deal. It's a reflection of an organization that half-assed a rebrand, wasn't willing to say the hard part out loud, and has generally been cowardly in their change for a better future. But the people who made those decisions are gone. It's not really on the Harris, Peters, Quinn, etc. administration to be like, by the way, now that we own the team, we have a statement to make about this old controversy that no one's talking about right now. No, it's fine. Just keep moving forward. And I think that's the biggest thing that certainly Dan regrets is he became a speed bump, and in doing so, stopped that progress forward ever so momentarily, as in it slowed, and then it's going to pick right back up. You slow down for the speed bump, you reaccelerate to the exact same speed that you were going. And to his point, it became the talking point of the weekend instead of Jayden Daniels had an outstanding first weekend of rookie minicamp. But the thing is, as long as Jayden Daniels has good OTAs and Mike Sanders still makes a play here and Terry McLaurin, it seems to be getting along great with the new offense and things look good, nobody's going to talk about this again. So I'm done with it, as long as all y'all are. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. When we get back, it is WNBA opening night, and Mystic star Shakira Austin joins us here on the Team 980. WNBA opening night tonight. You can watch it on Monumental Sports. Of course, you got national games as well, including Caitlin Clark's debut. But here in D.C., the Mystics hosting the Liberty. And about 2 weeks ago at this point, we were able to go over to Mystics Media Day and had, I would say, 8 A-plus interviews. Really, it was actually really hard to pick our favorite in terms of which one we wanted to air for you today. They're all available on our YouTube page. Really, really great stuff. But I think my favorite was with Shakira Austin. So considering she's the star of the show along with Ariel Atkins, and I thought she gave just tremendous insight. Here's my chat with Mystics star Shakira Austin, who will be back on the floor tonight as the Mystics get going in the 2024 season. First of all, I'm sure you've been asked this a million times, but how you feeling?
I feel amazing. I feel very blessed right now to get back and continue to play the sport that I love.
How hard? Yeah, I heard you say in one of your other interviews, like this is your first major injury that you've had to rehab from. So what kind of test has that been for you?
Oh, it's definitely been an ongoing battle. Trying to understand the highs and the lows. Trying to, I wouldn't say lower my expectations, but understand that it's going to be a little bit of a roller coaster. And regardless of how great I'm doing, regardless of how much I'm taken care of, it's a new experience of, not being able to control everything. But it's definitely enlightened me in a new way, a different love for the game, a different perspective when it comes to being on the bench and supporting the girls and figuring out how I can pour into them in a different way. And it's been amazing. It's been a good journey.
Unfortunately, in sports, you probably have plenty of people you could call that have been through major injuries. That's the nature of it.
Oh, yeah, for
sure. Was there anybody in particular or a few people that you could lean on that have been there for you, whether it's teammates, coaches? I mean, obviously you probably have family and everything too, but mentors that you've been able to call and lean on?
Right now I have just kept it to, my family and, my support staff here with DC. Honestly, they've been here with me every day. So, having their mentorship and their guidance along this new journey for me has been, more than helpful.
Is Maisha Hines-Allen helpful at all?
Yeah, she's great on getting on my nerves a lot. But, she's a great person right there. She makes you laugh when you really need it. And, she's just about as annoying as it gets, though.
I'll take that footage from Maisha Cam and the social cam. I feel like we got 3 cameras that captured all of that. This is the beauty of Media Day. At the Wizards Media Day, I think I almost started a fist fight between Denny and Kyle.
I can wholeheartedly believe that.
Yeah, the brotherly fighting between them. My bad on that. In terms of the rehab process, obviously so much of it is spent physically preparing your body, but you also have a basketball season that you got to get ready for. Were you able to work on your game at all, and what maybe different elements did you work on more because you were limited athletically in what you were allowed to do?
Oh, yeah. I think my favorite period, well, in the moment it wasn't my favorite moment, but now it was my favorite of, actually not being able to do much. It had to be stationary. It had to be ball handling. It had to be formed and, just a lot of things that I'm able to tune up and focus on that, having my full abilities, I probably wouldn't have focused on it as much. So I think that gray period of before I could really get clear to do stuff, that was where I was able to really work on a lot of my passing and just things, like I said, I wouldn't be able to focus on as much.
On the physical ability side, sometimes you hear athletes that are like, oh, yeah, when I came back from my injury, I came back stronger or whatever because you weight train or you focus on things a different way. We saw the picture the other day.
Yeah? Which one?
The one where you almost dunked.
Oh.
How, is that you? Is that real? Like, is the vert better than it was before?
Listen, I am stronger. I can jump way higher. It's just, I can't believe that, even after a surgery and, just having the 5 months of rehab and strength and lift conditioning, it's completely transformed my body. And, I'm so excited for that level when it comes to my game of, I remember when we first started doing contact, Coach E was coming over to, get over a screen for me, and I hit him. I initiated the contact, and he was like, whoa, Karen, he almost threw me to the ground. And I was like, hey, I'm getting stronger.
Isn't that what you want? Come on now.
I'm like, what, you want me to be soft? So, Yeah, it's been really exciting to see that transformation in my body, not only mentally, but, just physically too.
You can dunk one this year?
Oh, yeah, my goal is to catch a body. I don't want to
Okay.
catch no clean one.
Not fast break.
Yeah, I
no.
don't want no wide open dunk. Like, of course, it'll be great if I get a dunk, but I wanted to switch it up a little bit, have a little pizzazz on it.
I love it. So this is a totally new team this year.
Yeah.
Elena's been the focal point, especially offensively, for so long.
Yeah.
Tasha's been the primary ball handler.
Mhm.
They're both gone. You got you got A. Like, you have great players here, no doubt.
Yeah.
Where do you see your role, but on both sides? Because I think a lot of people from the outside, myself included, would be like, Kira is the anchor for this team on both ends. How do you see your role, though?
Yeah, pretty much what you just said. I think my defensive abilities can make us the best in the league, and I think my offensive game was definitely starting to showcase itself last year, and so now with a lot of pieces missing, it's really my time to step up, and that was my mentality of, regardless of who was going to be here, was I can do more to help this team win, especially offensively. And for me, I just want to be able to showcase that I can be dominant, but also make people around me better. And I think there's a lot of great players who can't really do that. So I want to become someone who can help that and help a franchise.
In year 3, do you suddenly look around and be like, wait, I think I'm a vet now?
Oh, yeah. I love it. I can sit around. I'm like, look at all the youngins coming in all late. I was just doing that last year, but it feels great. I feel like the rehab has upped me 3 more years. Like, I'm in year 6 right now.
You know what's interesting about that? And I do a lot of stuff, talking to Spirit players as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you've gotten a chance to know any of them, but Croy Bethune, who's one of their rookies.
Yeah.
And we talked about this literally last week.
Mm-hmm.
Croy, unfortunately, had multiple ACL injuries coming through school. And she talked about how, because I had multiple of her teammates be like, she's one of the most mature rookies I've ever seen in my life.
Yep.
And she talked about how it was because of the injuries.
Exactly.
She just got to a point where she didn't have a choice. That prehab and rehab and all that stuff was if I don't do this, I'm going to get hurt again, and I'll be damned if I'm getting hurt again. Is that what happened to you too, in a way?
It's completely what has helped change my perspective and, just my maturity. Like you said, it's something that forces you to do it. And if you want to come out here and play this game and play at a high level, you have to come in and do that, especially coming off an injury. And I think one of the common, hints that I've heard from older girls, from vets, is that they didn't learn until later in their careers how important it was to tune into their body and to become prepared and be a true pro. Because at the end of the day, I think a lot of us just tend to lean on our talents, and that will carry us far. But to come in and have a different expectations for yourself and your body, and to be the first in the gym and the last to leave, it's definitely made me grow up a lot. And I've also learned to appreciate it. I've appreciated sometimes just being in here all day, because it's just a grateful experience to still be able to go through and to still be able to come back from that.
No doubt. You're such a mega competitor. Anyone that's watched you play knows that. Anyone who's
if you would have caught practice the other day, you would have seen a lot of my teammates a little upset. So yeah.
But people on the outside are like, "Oh, this is going to be a down year for the Mystics." Do you kind of low key like that?
Oh yeah, I love it. I want everyone in the world to think that the Mystics are complete right now, and that we're not going to be able to do anything. Because that just keeps everything easy for us. We can continue to focus on us. We know what we have in that locker room. We know what we have on our staff, and we're confident in that we can really make something out of this year. So yeah, I want everybody to doubt us. I want every team to doubt us.
Yeah, bring it on.
Bring it.
All right, we're wrapping up with some fun questions here.
Okay.
Quick hitters. Your favorite vacation you've ever been on?
Favorite vacation? I would say Brazil. I went in high school, and that was a great experience. Really fun.
What's the place that you still want to go on vacation that you haven't been to yet?
Probably Turks and Caicos.
Okay.
Oh my gosh, I want to go out there. It's so pretty.
It looks so beautiful. I've never been, but
it looks
if it looks
amazing.
as good as it does on Instagram,
Exactly.
send me.
Probably cost as beautiful as it looks.
Facts. What's your coffee order?
Coffee, I'm really not a coffee drinker, but since
Do you have a go-to morning routine drink, something like that?
I will drink a tea. I love hot tea in the morning, but Since we have it available here at the gym for free, I do like a French vanilla in the morning every now and then.
That's not a bad call at all.
Yeah.
All right, this is where I get everybody in trouble. Apparently, the teammate
Lord.
you trust the most to drive on a road trip.
Oh, to drive?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, underneath myself, because I do believe I'm the best driver in this team, and that I will get us through any situation.
Okay.
I'm gonna go with Slim, only because I've been passenger princess to her plenty of times, and I was able to fall asleep and do whatever I want. I don't have to worry or stress.
Okay. Is there a teammate that you trust least to drive on a road trip? This is where I actually caused the problem.
See that girl Queen right there, number 4? Yeah.
I've gotten a couple of
will
queens.
not go in that car with her.
It wasn't as unanimous as when we did this with the Wizards, and literally everybody said Denny.
Yeah.
But I have gotten a couple of queens. Best and worst on the aux in the locker room.
Best and worst. Well, I'm sorry to throw her under the bus again, but Queen has to be the worst. She brings a different vibe. If you want to come and get turned and get lit, cool, she'll get me lit. But for the most part, I like a relaxing, soothing playlist, so I'm gonna go with Slim. Slim has the old school R&B, the good vet vibe that, being
Love
a
it.
vet, I can relate to.
Get out of here. All right, last two quickly. You get to spot up anywhere outside the paint. You make the shot, you get $1,000. Where are you spotting up?
I'm spotting up on the left block.
Left block, just outside the paint.
Just
Can I get my toes?
Yep,
just
I'm gonna
outside?
probably hit a bank shot.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice. And then NBA Finals. Any predictions there? I know we're early in the playoffs, so.
Yeah. No, I have no predictions. I have none.
Honestly, that's probably the correct answer. The rest of our media interviews, check out the Team 980's YouTube page or my YouTube page at Craig Hoffman. I also put out the thread of all of them together if you want to pick a couple between now and tip-off tonight on Twitter at Craig Hoffman. We get back to the Commanders. It'll be our Pick 6 at 6. Yeah, it's back, baby. The Pick 6 at 6. 6 biggest storylines from day one of OTAs. Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We are always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Coming up at 6:30, we count down the top 5 biggest stories coming into the WNBA season on WNBA opening night. But right now, we're going to bring it back. And I know your computers are waging a war with you right now. So do we have the Pick 6 open? Is that something that is possible for us to play at this time? Or has the technology made that not a thing?
We need about 12 seconds.
Okay, so we need about 12 seconds before we can do that.
Yes.
And then we're also hoping, because we're pretty sure we did a Pick 6 at some point this offseason, after Eric Bieniemy was let go. Because if you'll remember, longtime listeners of the show, this used to end with a great Eric Bieniemy quote that kind of got funnier as the year went last year. But we're pretty sure we replaced it with the Dan Quinn quote. I think it was the do hard stuff, if you will, with good people. If not, we're all going to find out together right now that we need to go change that. But the 12 seconds have elapsed, and it's time for the Pick 6.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level and build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
Okay, it wasn't the Dan Quinn quote, and I think we need to shorten that up. But Josh Harris, a reminder, there's a smart guy in charge now. I'll take that in. That work for you, at least for today?
Yeah, just for today.
Okay, we'll re-rack that for next week. There's a lot going on as I was driving back from Ashburn today. But here we go. Pick 6. It's the 6 biggest storylines from day one of Commanders OTAs. Number 1, do we have the numbers?
That we do not have.
Okay, no numbers today. Number 1. Everybody showed up. Yay! It's voluntary. We have no, and both for we don't have any Chase Young narrative stuff. And also, I think more importantly, realistically, forget the annoying storylines that don't really matter this time of year. It does matter when everyone shows up because it shows a level of buy-in for this new group. There's no contract stuff, and everybody's like, I want to see what they got. And it shows the importance of these workouts. I actually think these should be able to be mandatory. That's something that's worked out in the collective bargaining agreement. And I don't begrudge the amount of money that pro athletes make because especially football players, careers are so short. They're trying to earn a lifetime's worth of wages in a couple of years. But if you're going to earn a lifetime's worth of wages in a couple of years, you're going to have to show up for more than 17 days of work. Or, obviously 17 games, but whatever number of days plus practices in the season. You can show up in May for a couple of weeks, not just from August to January. This should be a part of it because it also, it's just better. It makes the product better. It makes your chances of winning better. The fact that this is voluntary is a little bit silly to me, but that's what the players have negotiated, and so be it. Ultimately, because it is voluntary, the fact that everyone volunteered is good. Love that. And Frankie Louvu, one of the new signees, he was also jazzed about the enthusiasm that he and his teammates are showing for Dan Quinn and the start of a new era.
Man, it shows a lot of guys just, buying in and having the main goal. Keeping the main thing, and having all guys here says a lot, man. It's voluntary, like you said. But having guys out here, man, it's going to take us where we want to be, and we put in the work now for later.
I also love that DQ's already got some of the guys using some of his catchphrases. Keep the main thing is one of my favorite pet phrases, so big fan of that. And obviously that means you also get the great mix of the rookies and the vets. It means that guys like Austin Eckler and Zach Ertz can work with younger players where if they were like, I'm a vet, I'm cool, I don't need this, then especially a guy like Ertz who was brought in by Cliff because he knows the offense, it's like, nah, we need you to be here to help everybody else. And Dan Quinn talked about that before practice today.
Yeah, I think first off is like these are the standards, that we want to, practice with. And so that was a discussion that they had all together beginning yesterday. And some things, this is how we do business here. But if you don't have to look too far to watch their practice habits, how they do things, follow a process or a routine, that's what I'm looking for from those guys. They have to get their self ready, but by just doing what they do, that also, can be a multiplier.
That's what you're looking for. Can I be a multiplier? Can I be someone who helps me, but also helps others, and thus raises the level of everybody merely by doing the things that I'm supposed to? I love that term from DQ. All right.
Number 2.
Jayden Daniels. Anthony, you like that a little bit too much. That was a nice.
That actually was pretty good.
Number 2.
Yeah, that's right, Jim Cutler, coming for your job. No, I'm not. Jayden Daniels Day, which really should be
number 5.
By the way, Tress Way currently wearing number 10. But so is Kaz Allen. This is not a permanent number. I mean, we don't know if Kaz is going to make the roster. But apparently, the official, unofficial word, sorry to the Commander's spokesman who I was talking to. I will at least leave the identity of which PR staffer I was talking to a mystery, because I don't know if the story is on or off the record. But I'm going to tell it anyway, because there's absolutely no consequences other than laughter, because it's really funny. But, Anthony, apparently Tress Way asked the equipment staff if he could put a question mark on his jersey.
And what was their answer?
Apparently no, because he's wearing number 10 for right now.
Okay.
Which is just double 5.
Yeah.
But I feel like you should. There are no rules. It's training camp, or it's the off season. Like, he obviously can't wear a question mark in a game, and maybe they don't have a giant question mark in their printing. But I feel like you could cut one.
You cut one. You could tape it onto the jersey. You could manufacture some stuff.
Josh Harris has got enough money to find a question mark. Frankly, Tress Way's got enough money to find a question mark. I think they should have let him do it. I think that even if they just did it for today, that would have been a funny bit. So, Tress, I endorse your shenanigans. Equipment staff, get on it. But we'll see what number Tress Way winds up during the season. Anyway, the point of this is that Jayden Daniels had his first day with his veteran teammates today. And Cliff Kingsbury was asked after practice, a solid one from Jayden Daniels, if there are parts of the playbook where Daniels is ahead of where he expected, and why he thinks that is.
Yeah, I think Coach Kelly, Coach Sloan there at LSU, Coach Kelly is phenomenal offensive mind, always has been. He's very demanding, coaches him hard, and you can tell that Jayden bought into that and really studied it, because he's farther ahead definitely than I thought.
He's trying to be a sponge, but has he also, because of who he is, come to you and said, look, there's something that I like and we could do?
Yeah, we're working through that part. I've always told those guys, if you like it, tell me. If you don't like it, tell me. I think it's the best play in the world. If you don't like it, it's not going to work. And that's kind of the relationship I want to have with those guys. And as we get more comfortable together, I think, we'll have that type of dialogue.
And even before that, Cliff said that protections was a big one in terms of what Jayden liked. So he's like picking up on some of the nuances, forget the route combinations and things like that. That last part I think is super interesting off Chick's question. And different coaches have different approaches, because I think back to some of the stories that Logan has told about his time in Atlanta with Kyle and Matt Ryan, and how, I guess this was before Logan got there. Logan was there with Sark and Matt Ryan, and Sark took a very similar approach to Cliff, where it's just like, if Matt Ryan would be in the install meeting and Sark was like, we're going to have this play, and Matt's like, I don't like that one. Sark would be like, never mind, and throw out the sheet of paper, sometimes literally. Delete the slide. But the year before, there's these epic stories of Matt being like, I don't like that play, let's take it out. And Kyle being like, no, I like this play. We're going to run it because it's going to work. And it pushed Matt, and Matt won MVP that year. So I do think there has to be a push and a pull, but Matt Ryan was a veteran. Matt Ryan had been in the league for 7-8 years at that point, 9 years, and was in the peak of his powers. It's important for Jayden Daniels to do stuff that he's comfortable with, to get comfortable in the league, and then as you progress as a quarterback, which is something Cliff talked about at a different point, he's like, the stuff we did year 1 with Kyler in Arizona is different than year 4 with Kyler in Arizona. And in a separate answer, Cliff said, I want to make sure this is year 1 of the Commanders offense, not year 5 of the Arizona Cardinals. And so I think the approach that Cliff has is the right one for right now for Jayden, and the fact that he's already ahead opens up the possibilities of things to suggest for him to ultimately be comfortable with. Also,
Number 3.
Jayden's got a lot of resources, as do the rest of the quarterbacks. It was something that stood out to me today is just how many guys are around the quarterbacks during their individual work. And obviously when the whole offense comes together, you're going to have a lot of that. But damn, they got a lot of dudes coaching up these quarterbacks, and they're working really well together. They all bring something a little bit different, and Cliff was asked about that after practice today.
We got a bunch of former quarterbacks, on the offense, whether it's Brian, Tavita, myself, David Blau, and then we got Marcus, who's played a lot of years and been a starter in the league for a lot of years. So I think all of us are really excited to work with him, and any pointers, tips, things we can help him grow and expedite the process, we're definitely here for it.
How do you make sure when you have all those guys who can give that input that you're not overloading with input or making sure that the message is what you need it to be?
Yeah, you just make sure they're the right guys, smart guys. We meet every day, talk through things. We're going to cover this, that, and the other, have a great plan, and go out there and put it together.
I think the thing I like about what I know about this staff is there seems to be a level of humility. Like, I could see, for whatever reason, let's say Jayden's talking to Brian Johnson, and he asks a question where he's like, I don't know how Cliff wants to do that. Let's go find out. And they'll go to Cliff and they'll find out. Or Brian will go back and then I'll get back to you. And, you go to the coaches meeting afterwards. It's like, hey, Jayden asked this. Hey, all right, let's go tell him. There's a ton of guys with a ton of experience who have a lot to offer for Jayden Daniels. But it's important that, as Cliff said, they're all on the same page. And I think it's a great follow-up question by Kime. And it's kind of been my biggest question about this offensive staff. And if I ever get the chance to talk to Cliff, he's pretty evasive in questions. Like, he's just a very straightforward guy. That's just how he is. It's not even him like being diabolical about anything. But I just think that the interesting thing is how this group comes together, from schematics to the language to or the verbiage to everything in the way that they approach this offense. How do they make it cohesive? And, as Cliff said, their meetings to make sure that they are on the same page are essential pieces of success, or the path to success for the players to actually ultimately get where they want to go. Obviously, a lot more to the offense than just the quarterback. And I was talking to my guy Zach Selby on the sideline today, and we started talking about the wide receivers. And it's really interesting because I think that there's 4 guys that seem like locks, whether because of like they were brought in by this group, they were former first-round picks or highly paid players. That's your Jahan and your Terry. They were drafted by this group, so that's Luke McCaffrey, and then the first guy I was talking about was Olamide Zaccheaus. Like, he was brought in by this group. They didn't bring him in to cut him. And then things get real interesting. Before practice today, before I get to where I think this group is going into the offseason program and who has a chance to separate themselves, here was Dan Quinn on the receivers.
Yeah, what's fun about this is we want to get as many reps as we can. So you may even see it 7-on-7 today. We'll have 2 fields going at the same time. And the purpose behind that in a 7-on-7 setting is to get more reps for everyone. And the more you see, the more that you go. And I think as you're installing a new system, that's an important piece of this, just time on task and reps of it. So, but you're right, guys like Terry, who you've seen, and the work ethic, what it is. So these are some cool moments to see what people can do. And then it's our job to find what special traits do they have, and then see how we can feature them.
So you've got, as I said, the mix, the work ethic. They're trying to get as many reps as possible, not only to let these guys learn, but like that lets them evaluate. But then you've got, I would call like wide receiver 4 or wide receiver 5, let's say, the return spot, right? Who is going to be the punt and kick returner for this team? You've got Jamison Crowder. You've got Kaz Allen as slot-type guys who have high return ability. Kaz, especially at UCLA, like big-time kick returner. They were working on him on punts last year. It just never came together. He was on the practice squad. He's still here. Jamison Crowder was the guy that they brought in when Kaz Allen wasn't good enough and Dax Milne wasn't good enough. And Dax got hurt. Dax, by the way, still floating around. Very polished receiver, not very explosive, and doesn't give you a lot in the return game other than reliability. Jamison Crowder, he's a pro who knows how to get open and make plays. I love Jamison Crowder. I would have him on my football team. But you kind of got that spot. But if Luke McCaffrey shows return ability, which he definitely has, do you just say, screw that spot, let's spend that position somewhere else? Do you not care about the return ability and you just say who's the best receiver? In which case maybe Dax Milne gets a little bit of a boost over a guy like Kaz Allen, where if return matters, Kaz gets the boost over Dax. Then you've got Diami, who I think is competing with like Bryson Tremaine and some of these other younger receivers who are really glorified special teams players who line up at receiver sometimes to give other guys a blow. And what do you bring? For Diami, he blocks his face off, and he's really fast. I'm going to use the phrase he's really fast over he's a deep threat because he's barely been a deep threat over the course of his career, but in theory, that's what he is. But he brings you he brings you speed, which tends to show up more on special teams, and he is a willing and capable blocker. Bryson Tremaine, excellent special teams player. He was actually out there as the personal protector on punt team today. And he also is a big-bodied receiver that gives you something a little bit different and continues to make plays consistently when lined up at receiver, even if he's like the 9th guy on the depth chart right now. But like, to me, those are the two receiver spots that are being competed for, is the return spot and the team's /blocker spot. And those are some of the names to watch for. You've also got like Mitchell Tinsley and some other guys floating around, and we'll see who else winds up making this team into training camp. Last two things in our pick 6.
Number 5.
Dan Quinn talked about just like the efficiency of the session. You just heard in the bite that we just played about the dual 7-on-7. That was very cool to see. I also like how they just acknowledge, like Dan said this before practice today, it's just this is a passing time of year. This is a passing session. And so when the offensive and defensive lines who don't participate in that stuff because you can't have the contact and doing 11-on-11 feels silly, once they were done with their work, they just went inside. It's like, let's get your lift in, let's get you fed for lunch, and let's get into meetings and let's get you out of here. Let's respect your time. I think that goes a long way by those guys to feel appreciated, not to stand around and watch a bunch of position guys just throw it around. So I genuinely like that. And then the last thing, we already talked about it. We're not going to talk about it again. Just to mention it and to be our
number 6
here is, in case you missed it, we talked about it more in depth at 5:30. But I thought Dan Quinn's answer when Barry's Faluga from the Post asked him about the shirt that he wore over the weekend was great. I thought it was graceful. I thought it said like, hey, this is why I did it, but I learned a lot. I learned a lesson. I probably could have found another way to accomplish my goal. And there was grace, there was humility, and there was professionalism. And that's what I would expect from Dan Quinn. That's what I expect from any NFL head coach. But that's not what we've gotten from the head coaches here on a lot of different topics in the past, whether they be attempts at professorial dissertations, dismissiveness, both, whatever. Dan was human, he was graceful, and that's how that story dies. And so good job on Dan Quinn just being a human about it and admitting that he learned something out of it and taking the opportunity to learn from something that kind of blew up over the weekend. All right, we get back here on the Hoffman Show. It is WNBA opening night, the most anticipated W opening night in the league's near 30-year history. So what are the big stories entering the season? I guess you can probably guess at least one, if not a few of them. But we'll fill you in for everyone who's kind of tuning into the W in a major way for the first time. Next, it's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. free Odyssey app. We are streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. It is WNBA opening night, and it is going to be a fun one. You got the champs on ring night coming up tonight, late night, 10 p.m. on ESPN2. You also have the Caitlin Clark debut. You have the Mystics in action tonight. And so we thought, Anthony, it would be fun to give everybody, now that there's more eyes on the W than ever, 5 things to watch for this WNBA season. Are you ready to do this, sir?
Let's get this money, baby.
We did not have the numbers counting down for our pick 6 at 6. Is there any chance that they're working now?
Oh, yeah, I can pull those up real quick.
Okay.
You know, it'll take me like 2 seconds or so, maybe 3 seconds.
Maybe 4 seconds?
Or maybe 5 seconds.
We're working. We're now a sixth of the way through the shot
clock.
clock.
We're there.
Okay. Well, we're going to go 5-1, Anthony. So if you would please do the honors of getting us started with
number 5.
Thank you. Number 5, especially here in D.C., is the Washington Mystics season, which to me comes down to 2 key questions. One is a part basketball, part marketing question, if you will, and the other is kind of a big picture question. The big picture question is what are they going to do? Which, in the eyes of most prognosticators, could be more crudely asked is, how bad will they be? Mystics are not expected to be a particularly good team this year. I do think that there is a chance, I see a path for them to be far better than people think. Ariel Atkins is a very, very, very good basketball player. She's an Olympian for a reason. She's just kind of been a third banana, if you will, behind Natasha Cloud and, of course, Elena Deladon. And when especially Elena has missed time, the Mystics have not been particularly good. But if Shakira Austin emerges as the kind of superstar, as she prepares to be an Olympian potentially as well, the kind of superstar that we think she can be, then, that pairing could lead them to be a competitive basketball team. The good news is they will either be competitive or in the mix for a very, very good draft pick, not only this year, but the year after. The way the WNBA lottery works, it is your combined record over 2 years that affects your lottery odds. And so, Paige Beckers is the prize of the next draft, and then you have Kiki Rice potentially the year after that. And so ultimately we'll see what the Mystics do. But I think there's also a lot of eyes on how well Aaliyah Edwards, this year's draft pick, plays in comparison to Angel Reese in Chicago. Unpredictably, Anthony, as I pulled myself back into the sports world this morning after a couple of days off over the weekend and went and looked at YouTube and looked at our comments from the weekend, I was getting crushed for saying that I think the Mystics made the right decision drafting Aaliyah Edwards over Angel Reese, because I genuinely think most people have never seen Aaliyah Edwards play outside of the one game against Caitlin Clark in the tournament, where Aaliyah wasn't particularly great against Iowa, and they've seen Angel Reese dominate at LSU, and she had a good preseason, and people are going to have the familiarity bias. WNBA scouts almost unanimously would pick Aaliyah Edwards over Angel Reese. That doesn't mean that they're right, though. Angel Reese is an exceptional basketball player. And so if Angel's really good for Chicago and Aaliyah struggles, even if, we'll see what it is long term, but struggles this year, people are going to have things to say, and people are going to care about the Mystics in a way that, it's not going to feel very good for the people in charge over there. So I do think that the brand value that Angel has makes that a much more intense discussion than it would be if it was just 2 players that people didn't have a lot of invested feeling about. But the reality is they do, and that is going to be the comparison between the 2, which I think sucks kind of for both of them, but especially for Aaliyah, is going to be a story of the Mystics season. Hopefully a good one, which I mean, hopefully at least people are like, wow, they're both really good, and the Mystics made the right pick, because I don't wish poorly on Angel by any stretch of the imagination. I hope that she crushes it in Chicago. But if Angel's good and Aaliyah's bad, that's going to be a story here in D.C. all summer long.
Yeah, definitely going to be something to monitor just because we had that luxury. And, hopefully, Aaliyah ends up, panning out and, playing extremely well. But it's always, the what if when it comes to, our Washington franchise. I seem to think we always get it wrong to an extent, or, we miss out on an opportunity. And I hope this isn't one of those times where, we had a chance and we didn't take it.
For sure. I mean, Aaliyah's shooting and her passing. I mean, Angel's a really good passer as well. I think it's actually an underrated part of her game. But Aaliyah's shooting is the big difference maker. We'll see if that pairs well with Austin and how those 2 play together starting tonight against the Liberty. All right, for the rest of the league, Ant, next storyline, please.
Number 4.
The schedule. You're going, the schedule? Yeah, the schedule. It is a 40-game schedule that is being jam-packed between now and August. because the Olympics are also in August, and the league will take an Olympic break, which means they got to get a lot of games in. They have streamlined the Commissioner's Cup to be a much less burdensome on the schedule, but there are back-to-backs. There's a lot of things that the league tries to genuinely avoid. Actually, Ted Leonsis made a pretty cool announcement on the Junkies this morning that the Mystics will actually play back-to-back games against Angel Reese in Chicago and then Caitlin Clark and Indiana at Capital One Arena on back-to-back days. Like, that's cool and all, but I prefer to not have to play back-to-back. And so, especially with some of these rookies that we're going to talk about in a minute, coming off their college seasons and a lot of other veterans coming off of seasons overseas, like the schedule, the compounding of minutes, one, obviously injury risk is there, but two, what kind of quality are we going to get in terms of play? Are we going to get some sluggish, not ideal basketball because this schedule is so compact? So, unfortunately, Ant, the reality is the schedule is story number 4. Number 3 is we finally get to the actual teams themselves.
Number 3.
Number 3 would be, what does year 2 of WNBA super teams look like? The New York Liberty made the finals last year, really gelled as the season went, and their big 3 is back together. Breanna Stewart, Sabrina Ionescu, and Jonquel Jones. I recently saw a WNBA player ranking that had Jones and Stewart as 2 of the top 5 players in the league. That's always a great formula for success. Obviously, Sabrina's continuing to come into her own. She's inconsistent, but when she's on, her shooting is a huge, huge game changer. And so in year 2, with all of them playing together, can they figure out how to topple the Aces? We'll get to them in a second. And then the other kind of new super team in Seattle is obviously the Storm. Nneka Ogwumike, and back after maternity leave and some injuries is Skylar Diggins. And so with Diggins Smith and Ogwumike coming together and to join Jewel Lloyd in Seattle, that is a hell of a lot of talent. And you've still got Connecticut floating out there, who's really, really excellent with Alyssa Thomas and Dewana Bonner. So you've got a ton of talent concentrated in just a couple of teams. And by the way, this is going to wind up being a bit of an era for the W because in a couple of years, expansion is coming. Naturally, the talent is going to get more distributed. But as we sit in this super team era, how do some of these new teams come together? And how do some of the teams that have now been together for a year continue to grow?
Yeah, I forgot all about the Storm, to be honest. And it's crazy because you think about Skylar, you think about Nneka, you think about Jewel Lloyd. They all played against or relatively in the same era, I guess. So they're more of an older, I guess, more experienced super team compared to, what you have in Vegas, what you have in New York, and also Connecticut. So I'm excited, man. Also, to the expansion team, what is the team in Golden State?
They announced that today. The Valkyrie, Golden State Valkyrie with the purple logo. It's sick. By the way, Paige Beckers was like, "That is a beautiful logo." So
it is.
And Paige could go back for not just next year. She's got another year after that, right? If she really wanted to be the number 1 pick in 2026, I think she can.
Yeah.
Between injury and COVID year, we got to be running out of COVID years. Anyway, all right. Last but not least, a team looking for a three-peat is number 2.
Number 2.
The Aces are looking to three-peat. The super team of the super teams. It was not easy for them last year. It was easy early. Candace Parker got hurt, and they really had to find themselves. They had to dig deep. They fought injuries in the finals, including Chelsea Gray, who will miss the first part of this season, their point guard, the point god. But they still have Asia Wilson. They still have Kelsey Plum. They still have Jackie Young. They still have Alicia Clark, my good friend, who is a menace defensively and is one of the best veteran leaders in the league. They still have. I feel like I'm still missing someone. Who am I missing?
They added Asia Fair.
Yeah, well, then they added a couple of rookies who, and that's the thing is their bench, which didn't play a ton last year, is even more confident and experienced. KB and Sydney Colson might start the year for them, who Sydney normally just is a delight on Instagram as she's a menace to society and everyone, or everyone and society. Sydney's a menace, but she's also a better basketball player than I think she gets credit for, and she's probably going to wind up starting this year. But then they add Daisha Fair from Syracuse, who's the 3rd all-time leading scorer, was quietly chasing Caitlin Clark up the scoring chart this past year. And Kate Martin, who everyone knows is Caitlin's teammate from Iowa, who, against all odds, made the team. Probably because she's a really smart player with positional size and can shoot and can rebound and can drive. And, they've got a little more depth to them, I think, this year than they did last year. And I will just say this real quick, Anthony, just a quick story because I have it. This weekend I was in Colombia. We went down to see Alicia and hang out and watch them play the Puerto Rican national team as their one and only preseason game in Colombia. And Asia Wilson is the should-be reigning league MVP, but former league MVP, finals MVP, best player in the sport. She is from Columbia, South Carolina. She helped put that South Carolina program on the map as the first major recruit that Dawn Staley had, who led them to their first national championship. And to be in the building and feel the emotion and see how much it meant to Asia to have that building fill up with people who watched her in college and are now came back to see her as a champion and a pro on the day that she announces she has her own signature shoe coming. I was emotional just being there. It was genuinely one of the coolest sporting events that I've ever been to in my life. And it was a preseason game that they won by 50. But it was just the environment of the building, the love in the building, and how much it meant to someone who's accomplished so much. On and floor, off the floor, she's a New York Times bestselling author. And so this feels to me like the year of Asia. I think she gets MVP. I think they three-peat. I have no idea what happens beyond that, but the vibes are good around the Las Vegas Aces, and I think that three-peat is coming.
You got some bold predictions, Craig?
Is it that bold to predict the team that's won 2 years in a row that somehow seems like they're getting better to win a third?
You might be right.
The law of averages is against it, but that seems to be the only thing. Last but not least, number one, of course.
Number one.
The attention, a.k.a. the Caitlin Clark effect. How many people truly watch? And how many people carry over from what was an easy carryover for 1 week after the national title game where the women outdrew the men on television into the WNBA draft, which was the most watched WNBA event ever. And that can't happen. Your draft can't be the thing that people watch more than any game that has ever happened. Now, there's a chance they break it tonight with Clark's debut, 7:30 on ESPN2. But, and certainly, when they play the Aces and they play the Liberty and some of these star-studded teams, and if they make the playoffs, it's going to be a story. But also, do people want to watch more than Caitlin Clark? Do people, we just saw the game against the Sky get moved. Is there an Angel Reese effect where the Sky are drawing outsized audiences? Or are people just now realizing this product is exceptional? And so if I like sports and I like basketball, I should watch it. And it's more sports, and more sports is good. We can talk about it. We can talk about the games. We can talk about the storylines. We can talk about it like we do sports because, Anthony, at the end of the day, it is merely sports. And then I think there is kind of the 1B of the Caitlin Clark effect, which is how does her game translate? The history of rookies in the WNBA is not good. That step up that, everyone wanted to crush Diana Taurasi and others who were like, hey, just don't think they're going to come in and be amazing in the W. That is a statement set on precedent, set on history. Rookies don't average 20 points a game in the W. I think in the last 10 years or something like that, 12 is the highest. Rookies struggle coming into the league, going all the way back to when Candace Parker broke that and was the league MVP and rookie of the year in the same year. And I think Clark in particular is such an interesting player to come into the league because this is a league that is built on physicality and technicality. And her game is so skill-based. And she has an ability to break down some of the technicalities and the physicalities by just doing things that other players can't. From the step-back threes to some of the get-ahead passes to all of these things. And there is a wave of players behind her, from Juju Watkins to Kiki Rice to Paige Beckers, that are coming in the next couple of years that are more in, let's call it the Steph Curry mold, the Caitlin Clark mold, than what has traditionally worked in the league. Highly physical, highly technical players that just crush their opponents with, making the right play at robotic consistency and doing those things extremely well and playing very tough physical brand of basketball. And so Caitlin's attention that she's brought to the game and how that translates is fascinating. I'm also fascinated how her game actually translates because I think that we're seeing a sea change in the style of play potentially in the WNBA to a style that I think is beautiful to watch. A lot of ball movement, great shot making, all the things that attract people to this game. And that is only going to then feed the attention as people watch and get extreme joy out of watching the highest level of basketball that you can watch anywhere, anytime, anyplace. That's our 5 biggest storylines going into the WNBA season. We get back, quickly wrap up the show here on the Team 980. Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. We're streaming live on YouTube at the Team 980. Tomorrow, NFL schedule release. That's the big story of the day. We will obviously be tracking it as the day goes. We know a couple of games already. We know that the Cowboys will be the first big Sunday game for Fox and Tom Brady. We know the Brazil game. We found out Chiefs-Ravens will be the season opener on the Thursday night. It sounds like Netflix is going to get the Christmas games. I'm sure we'll find those out earlier in the day tomorrow. So we'll talk about some of the biggest national games that have leaked out, and then we'll be doing the puzzle, Anthony, the math on the Commanders' schedule all show long. So that'll be our big story tomorrow, and then Thursday we'll have a lot more too on the NBA draft. I want to start getting some experts on that are scouting this draft as we move towards the Wizards and the number 2 pick a little over a month from now. Anything else, Anthony? Obviously, we'll have NBA or we'll have reaction to Clark's debut, to the Mystics tonight. NBA playoffs tonight are awesome. I don't know how many. God, I'm going to have a lot of boxes on my multi-screen tonight. I might have to actually pull out the iPad, do a little true 2-screen action tonight. A lot of basketball
on. Too much basketball, to be honest.
Yeah, can they spread this out? What are we doing?
Guess not, man.
Guess not. So, be a fun show tomorrow, that's for sure. Anything else that we should add from today, from the weekend, from anything? Do we have some sound for real things?
We have one thing, but we don't really got a lot of time.
Oh, how much time do we have left in the show?
We're off today at 55:20, so we got a minute.
Got a minute left in the show. What should we do with our final minute together on this Tuesday, Anthony? I got to say, it does feel like a Monday because I was off yesterday, which is Rachel and I were not debating, but talking about this earlier. For her job, she prefers to have Friday off. I prefer to have Monday off because then
Friday is way better.
No, because for our job, Tuesday, like you go back and it feels like Monday. But then all of a sudden I wake up tomorrow and I'm like, oh, it's Wednesday. And now I only got Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and I'm done. As opposed to like, you still get the Monday. And plus, Friday, everyone's just some more relaxed and more chill. Like, would you rather work a Monday or a Friday?
But watch this, Craig. What about those weekends where you have Mondays off already? So now you get Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday.
Yeah, 4 days.
You
better
lose
than
out on a
3
day
But
if
I'm
you're
saying
off on Monday.
If you got to pick between Monday and Friday, here's the way to think about it. Would you rather work a Monday or a Friday? I'd rather work a Friday. So I'd rather have Monday off.
But you lose out on those days of the year where you get that extra day. That's all I'm saying.
I think everyone should think about that, and we'll see you tomorrow.